to you about Moffie?
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me.
Yes, of course. I was delighted to watch the movie. It was one of those films that it was admirable to watch your character kind of develop in its own silence. But I mean, that had a lot to demonstrate and say with its actions.
Yeah,
How thrilled were you to play this role?
yeah. I mean, yeah, I think these kind of roles, come along very rarely. So I was incredibly privileged to be considered and then to do the role. And like you said, I say very little in the film. I think I say about 9 lines, which I think for me as an actor is always exciting because the more interesting things for me are the things that are unsaid rather than said. So I was
Right.
absolutely thrilled.
So how challenging is that? How you have to pretty much display and show so much emotion, just physically.
I think, the wonderful thing about film and good film and working with people like Portobello and Oliver Hermanis is that they really put you in the situation. So the acting becomes it's not really a problem because all you need to do is kind of be present in the situation, like those long train journeys and the violence when we arrive and the kind of physical labor of the film. It was all real. We were doing it as realistically as possible. So I don't think it was too much of a challenge for me to kind of just let myself go. I kind of really trusted Oliver, the director, to kind of shape the performance and help me shape that performance.
You open up the physical labor part of the film, which was quite a bit. I mean, I don't know how familiar you may be with any of the military gear and the pack, the uniform, but how was that?
It was really really interesting, because before we started shooting, we actually went on a military boot camp, and we had an advisor who had been in the army, and he ran us through like a boot camp week. So we became familiar with all the weapons and the gear and everything like that. And it's also something that I think as a young South African, I mean, my dad fought in this war, and he was in the army at this similar time that my character was there. So it's not something that's like kind of like unfamiliar to us. As much as it's very distant in some ways, it's still kind of part of our heritage.
Hmm. Very definitely something that I learned about. I was not familiar, and it's like you think like, oh, that was a while back, but in reality, it wasn't not too long ago that this was
No,
happening.
not at all.
It's crazy how stuff like this, happened. I mean, here you are, like a system feeding pretty much, this ideology of superiority and hate.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, that's what was the wonderful thing for me as an actor to interrogate is that my father had never really spoken to me about the army much because I think there's a lot of kind of shame around what happened during that time. But to kind of interrogate that time period because it's still, as much as we don't really like to talk about it so much anymore, I'm not saying everyone doesn't like to talk about it, but this kind of interrogation from a white male and looking back at kind of the trauma that was caused through the apartheid regime and holding up this apartheid regime and the toxic masculinity that came along with it was kind of a real privilege for me to unpack.
So you say your dad doesn't like to mention it too much. So when he found out you got this role, what did he open up a little to kind of help you and give you a little direction?
Yeah. Well, it was actually like he became my biggest resource. I finally got to ask him questions about it and really kind of get a feeling for what he felt during that time, what it feels now to be like post that period. And for instance, it's complex. The South African history is complex. It is. And for someone like myself, I come from a mixed race family. I have an adopted brother of color. And so from going from your father fighting in the war, which was essentially to keep, the ANC out of power, and now to suddenly being a mixed race family, it's a huge shift in a very small space of time. And I think for the American audiences, it's kind of similar to the Vietnam War, that trauma that was experienced and never really kind of addressed and interrogated in a way that felt meaningful. Well, in my perspective, felt meaningful.
Tell me a little bit about the casting. What loopholes did you have to go through to
Oh my gosh!
play
So
this?
I read the sides, and I felt like this was my character. But then I actually went through 11 auditions, and I got tried out for different characters because as much as the story centers around my character, it's so important to get the right chemistry for the larger cast. So I went through 11 auditions and I think 4 or 5 different chemistry reads. And I think after a year and a half of auditioning, I finally got the role. So it was rigorous, but I think it was worthwhile.
So what was one of the, after reading the full script, what was one of the scenes you were looking forward to shooting?
The scene that I was looking forward to shooting, the trench scene. I love the scene between Dylan and Nicholas, the intimacy in this kind of very hard place that has no kind of love or generosity or kindness. And there's this very little intimate moment that happens in the film. And that for me was kind of the one that I was very interested in playing.
And which part was the most challenging?
For me, it was the racism in the film. I've grown up in a post-apartheid South Africa where that kind of terminology still exists, but it's not something that I, I'm very conscious about separating myself from that kind of languaging. And so kind of the violence against Black bodies and the verbal abuse against it really kind of got under my skin. And I had to keep reminding myself, you're in 1981, not 2019.
Right. And okay, then I can ask you this. So it's Moffie. I mean, I understand it's considered like a derogatory word. Is it still today?
Yeah, absolutely. No, still today. And I mean, I got called in primary school because I did ballet and drama. I was called a Moffie. But for the filmmakers and the producers, using that title was kind of a provocation to reclaim that word and kind of interrogate what it means and why, when we want to diminish someone, we use this term to do it. So it was a provocation of a title.
Wow, that's impressive. I didn't know what the title exactly meant. I could figure it out during the film, and which I did. And I came in shock. I was like, oh, that's the name of the title. Like,
well, I mean, like the American equivalent would probably be the F word, like calling people, queer bodies, the F word. I mean, it's terrible.
Well, thank you for educating us, for being part of educating some of us in the U.S. Not familiar, and these things should be talked about and be aware that stuff like this did happen not too long ago. Thank you.
And still happening today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Have a good one. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.